Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I do videos on creepy and disturbing things. And I am rewatching The Haunting of Hill House, like the first season, Haunting of Hill House this week. And it reminded me of this story that I remembered way back in the day of a lot of the times people believe that they're being haunted and legitimately see things, but they're not. And it actually ends up being carbon monoxide poisoning, which to me is scarier than a ghost. I'm gonna go over the original story that I'm talking about all the way back from 1921. And then I'm going to tell you about a really fascinating Reddit story as well. Back in November of 1921, a woman that we only know as Mrs. H told her doctor that she was sure she was experiencing a real life haunting in her home. She had a big home with servant quarters and passageways, exactly what you'd expect the perfect setup for a haunted house to be. But instead of electricity, the house was lit by gas lights. Mrs. H, of course, was going to see the doctor for other symptoms that she was experiencing, but she described the hauntings like this. One morning, I heard footsteps in the room over my head. I hurried up the stairs. To my surprise, the room was empty. I passed into the next and then into all the rooms on that floor and then to the floor above to find that I was the only person in that part of the house. Sometimes after I'd gone to bed, the noises from the storeroom are tremendous as furniture is being piled against the door as if china was being moved about, and occasionally a long and fearful sigh or wail. Sometimes as I walk along the hall, I feel as if someone is following me, going to touch me. You cannot understand it if you've not experienced it, but it's real. As I was dressing for breakfast one morning, B, who is 4 years old, came to my room and asked me why I'd called him. I told him I had not called him, that I had not been in his room. With big and startled eyes, he said, "Who was it then that called me? Who made that pounding noise?" I told him that it was undoubtedly the wind rattling his window. "No," he said, "it was not that. It was somebody that called me. Who was it?" And so on he talked, insisting that he'd been called and for me to explain who it had been. B, of course, being her son, but they, are keeping their names anonymous because this report was given to a doctor. The whole family went on to experience weird rattling noises. They would walk by their plants and notice that their plants were withering away and dying. And then they would even experience temporary paralysis. Again, describing it, some nights after I've been in bed for a while, I felt as if the bedclothes were jerked off of me. And I've also felt as if I've been struck on the shoulder. One night I woke up and saw, sitting on the foot of my bed, a man and a woman. The woman was young, dark, and slight, and wore a large picture hat. I was paralyzed and could not move. It was actually Mrs. H's brother-in-law that finally suggested that perhaps the family was actually being poisoned with something. And they found out that he was right. I don't think they even had carbon monoxide detectors back in 1921, so they couldn't really detect it, but they were right. The family had been tested for the carbon monoxide poisoning, and there was, in fact, a leak in their house. So, of course, it wasn't so much of a poisoning that they just all, died, but it was enough of a leak that they were all getting these strange symptoms all together. Carbon monoxide poisoning can cause headaches, hallucinations, delusions, and confusion, amongst a whole slew of other symptoms depending on the dose that you're getting. It would totally make sense because everybody in the house is experiencing it, so it's not like one of them is, quote, crazy. Everybody's experiencing it, so it's not in their imagination, but it makes sense because they're all being exposed to carbon monoxide. Now, this story was by all accounts a true story. They did talk about it on one of NPR's podcasts. I think it was This American Life, and all other accounts, like the way I found this story was on a carbon monoxide prevention leak website. So as far as I know, this is actually a true story. We just don't know the names because they're technically patients, and so the names were hidden. Even more interesting, let's talk about this now pretty infamous Reddit post. User R Bradbury 1920 was the original poster of this thread, and honestly, Some parts of it would be legitimately funny if it wasn't such a serious situation, but thankfully nobody was hurt in the end. He's okay. But if it hadn't been figured out, this literally would have been the Reddit mystery of the century. The title is Post-it Notes Left in Apartment. On the 15th of April, I found a yellow post-it note in a handwriting that wasn't mine on a desk reminding me of some errands I had to do, but told literally nobody about. While odd, I chalked it up to something I did in my sleep, thinking maybe in my half-awake state I scrawled it so it didn't appear to be in my handwriting. I threw it out and thought nothing of it. On the 19th, I found another post-it note on the back of my desk chair in the same handwriting as the previous one, telling me to make sure that I saved my documents. I was freaked out, but there was no signs of a break-in, so I set up a webcam in my house aimed at my desk and used a security cam app for it to record after detecting movement. On the 28th, I woke up to find another post-it note, this one saying, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do." I immediately checked the webcams folder on my computer and found nothing from the night before, but my computer's recycling bin had been emptied, which I am certain I did not do recently, indicating that someone had noticed the webcam and deleted the files. They were just saved straight to the folder on my desktop called webcam. Today, the 1st of May, I found another post-it note, this time on the outside of my door with nothing written on it, and there also appeared to be post-its on many other doors in my apartment complex, all blank in varying colors. Do I have legal recourse here? I have no proof except for the post-its, but those are written by my pen and on my post-it notes, so conceivably I could have faked them. Would contacting the police get me into any trouble if they can't determine an outside source for this? I just wanted to make sure I'm not wasting anyone's time. Or should I consult my landlord or those also living in the complex? Edit. I pulled up a letter I received from my landlord back when I moved in, and the handwriting is identical. Could this count as evidence? I'm so sorry. It's not funny. It's only a little funny because he's fine. I wouldn't be laughing if he wasn't fine now. I think he was even trolling people later, so I think he understood that to some, yeah. Anyway, okay, so user Kakerlak, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but somebody said that it's German for cockroach. Can't confirm, but that he chimed in, or she, I don't know, chimed in and got the top comment and saved this person's life. They wrote, "It is possible your landlord is leaving notes inside your apartment, but they don't make any sense in the context that you're describing them. It's likely that you're writing the notes yourself, but you're forgetting. Do you use post-it notes as reminders in any other parts of your life or job? This might be a mental health issue. You might be experiencing some sort of dissociative disorder, or it might be a physical problem. You mentioned that you have a very unusual narrow bedroom with no windows. Is there a chance that you are not getting enough ventilation when you sleep, or that there is a carbon monoxide leak in the building? A cheap CO detector, which you should have anyway, is a fast way to find out. You'll also have really bad headaches." By the way, I was digging through the comments later. The reason that this commenter knew about his bedroom setup in the narrow bedroom with no ventilation is because he read a previous comment from this poster and he had mentioned the setup of his bedroom. So just to explain that. The OP responded, "I have had really bad headaches. I actually already do have a CO detector. Guess I should probably take that out of the box and plug it in." So then our Bradbury 1920 updated everybody in a new post and confirmed it was in fact CO poisoning that was causing this. Really funny because in his post he wrote, "Too long, didn't read. I had CO poisoning and I thought my landlord was stalking me." So he said that the CO detector said it was 100 ppm when he plugged it in. I had to look this up. For reference, ppm means parts per million in case you're not a sciencey or math person. And of course, ideally it's 0, but 0.5 to 5 ppm is apparently okay. If you get to 100, you should leave the area immediately. 200 ppm causes really bad symptoms, and as low as 400 ppm of carbon monoxide for only a mere 3 hours could be fatal. So anything above that, of course, is really, really bad. So for this person, it would make sense that even though it wasn't that high, it was still only 100 over a course of many days, then of course this is going to cause these kind of symptoms. The leak also could have gotten worse, or he could have just gotten such long exposure that he did finally get in serious, serious trouble or even died. I also did more digging and other comments of his and everything, and he did tell somebody else that he ended up going to the hospital and getting everything checked out, making sure, you know, neurologically he was okay, making sure physically he was okay. I just want you all to know, in case you're concerned, this person was perfectly fine in the end. And once they were out of the apartment, he actually said that once he was out of the building, then he felt better even the next day from just one night free of the carbon monoxide. But in conclusion, does this ever make you wonder how many of these hauntings we hear about? You know, people talking about their haunted houses on TikToks and everything, the people that aren't just like faking evidence with fishing line, you know, but like people claim they hear all these things. Do you ever wonder how many of those actually are something like this and they don't know it? Maybe it's even a lower level, so the hallucinations are not even this intense, but just enough that they think something weird is happening. Like, now I think about that a lot. Or people that just grew up in haunted houses and still claim to this day that they grew up in a haunted house, even though maybe they didn't know it, and while they lived there, something like this was going on. I don't know. Everybody, don't use grills inside. Don't use generators inside. Only out in the open air. Get a CO detector. They're very, very cheap. Random PSA that you guys didn't ask for, but they're super cheap. Go get one on Amazon and put one in your home right now. All right, guys, let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you've had any terrifying experiences with carbon monoxide especially, and I would be very interested in reading your thoughts. Thank you so much to my patrons, especially Colin Holmes, Deck of Cards, Creep Me Out, Alice Paul, Ryan Fenton II, Samantha RG08, Michelle Valdovino, and Tom L. But of course, thank you to everyone on the screen. And thank you guys so much. I will see y'all in the next one.